All right, today is March 28, 2019. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes CSI, the Kubernetes Storage SIG, sorry. Today we have a lot on the agenda. We're going to be finishing up Q1 1.14. We want to just go through very quickly and get an end of quarter status of what was completed and what was not completed. Then we're going to do Q2 planning for version 1.15 of Kubernetes and figure out what we are going to commit to. I've already added a tab for 1.15. Feel free to add additional items here if there's something you think we should be working on that we're not. So let's go ahead and get started. First up is 1.14 end of quarter status. So I think most of the work that we committed to for the migration engine has been complete. The inline of volume support for CSI was added as alpha. Block volume.
There's one correction there. We had to revert the change for this.
Ouch. Okay. Can you give any details on what happened there?
Yeah, basically there was a major bug discovered that kind of makes the feature useless. And it was too late to fix in the 1.14 timeframe, so it's just been punted to 1.15.
Okay. Okay, well, hopefully in 1.15 we get this in. Thank you and Vlad for all the hard work here. This is a very, very complicated piece of code, so it's not surprising that happened. Okay, next item is CSI out of tree offline online support, and as far as I understand, that was completed. Is that correct, Hamad?
Yeah, we have some documentation stuff to do actually.
Okay, nothing that isn't going to get done in the next week or so.
Yeah.
Okay. CSI driver lifecycle management. This was incomplete as far as I understand.
Yes.
Okay. CSI entry topology to beta. There was some wrap-up work here.
Yeah, there's one bug outstanding. I think Xing was able to address it, so we'll try to backport that fix into a patch release for 1.14. And then on the sidecar side, we still need to cut the sidecar and then update the documentation.
Okay, but for all intents and purposes, this should be available soon for 1.14?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna call it done then. Moving alpha CRDs to beta was completed, no surprises there. Secure volumes was a design, it was started. I'm not sure if we shared this publicly. I don't know if Jing is on the line, but I'm going to go ahead and mark that done. There is a design. It needs to be shared more widely, I think. Scalability testing.
The KEP was merged, but we didn't get a chance to actually implement the tests.
Okay, so let's change the goalpost here. Call it design, and we'll call it done. And then next quarter will be implementation. Let's make sure that 1.15 has the scalability test there.
Yeah, I put that there.
Perfect. Redesign keys for volume attached limits. I think this is incomplete. Or actually, the design...
Design has been arrived on. We had to transfer it to a KEP.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Do you want to call this done for this quarter or incomplete?
I would call design done.
Okay.
Because we have agreed on a design, so it's fine.
Sure. Pluggable end-to-end test framework. All the changes were in. And close to publishing docs and examples was where we left off. Any updates on that?
So I think the framework itself is done. We just need to go and publish some documentation for it so that others can start using it. And I don't know, Brad, if you have an update on this.
Sorry, my mute button was hidden. All right. Yeah, so Methusen's been working on this, and we're actually getting pretty good progress. It's not complete yet.
Well, I mean, it's usable, right?
Right, it is usable. It is usable.
Yeah.
So maybe we could say like phase 1 is complete, and we'll start like a phase 2 for improving the UX.
Yeah, we have examples of using it to test the host path and NFS.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think it'd be good to like publish those examples somewhere, maybe in the Kubernetes CSI documentation page.
Sure.
That way there's one central place where people can go and see and figure out how to use it.
So how about this? Let's mark it complete for this quarter and have a follow-up item for this quarter to do the documentation.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Let me transfer it over real quick before I forget. Okay, so we'll call that done. And okay, next item is Kubernetes Conformance. Any updates on that?
Not much work has been done, so it's an ongoing effort.
Okay.
We're switching to validation suites. The KEP is located there, so that's still in progress. So
Cool. Thank you for the update. Next item is local PV to GA. This, I believe, was completed, right, Michelle?
Yep.
Cool. Great work on that. Next item is cleanup storage feature gate handling. That was completed. Non-recursive volume ownership. This was started. Last status update was there was a KEP pending. Any updates on that? Has a design been agreed on for this yet?
Hey, sorry. We have to work on I think like we didn't get the KEP merged. Michelle has some comments. So I think in this quarter we'll have to convert this to a design only because we don't have a KEP that is agreed on yet. So it will take a little bit time. I think maybe this entire quarter to conversion design that will solve this, and maybe the next item as well, the revisit UID GID handling of volumes.
Okay, that's understandable. This is also a complicated area with lots of existing work and backwards compatibility issues. So
Yeah, and maybe the other consideration we need to also lump in here is Windows. Now that Windows is GA, like a lot of the stuff we have around this area is very Linux specific.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And then semi-related, the revisiting UID, GID handling volumes. I assume the status is the same?
Yeah, same.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna try set up some calls to handle the 16 and 17.
Okay. Next item is volume health. I don't think there was too much progress there. There were some open questions about what we want to detect from the CSI side. So design not agreed on.
Yeah, so I think we moved this one to 1.15. Yeah, I added a row there.
Got it. Cool. Thank you, Shing. Next item is CSI entry post GA tasks. Andrew was able to jump on this and help. Let's see.
I think some of the stuff was completed. I think the main things left over is the read-only stuff and then cleanup stuff.
Okay.
But I think it was partially completed.
We'll call it complete then. And then let's make sure there's an item for read-only in 115. CSI out of tree, automate the sidecar release process. So all sidecars have been updated, and there was some outstanding end-to-end tests.
Yeah, so the work for adding end-to-end tests is still ongoing. And I expect that will probably continue through next quarter.
Okay. So we'll call this done for this quarter, and then we'll carry on next quarter with end-to-end tests. Refactored kubelet driver registration is incomplete. There is an outstanding PR. It is still waiting on my review. And we'll move that into 115. Volume snapshots. Any updates on this?
So, sorry, we did make some progress on the design discussions of execution hook. We need to update the cap and then get API reviews.
Okay.
So yes, it's going to be continuing into next quarter.
Cool. Let's call it incomplete for now, and then we'll carry it on in 115. The CSI mount library moving to an external common repo. Travis was working on this. Looks like it'll continue into 114. Is that accurate, Travis?
Yes, this will continue. He started refactoring a lot of stuff, but there's still more to be done.
Okay. Next item is provisioning capacity. I don't think we got any work done there. Subpath was completed. Post-GA in-tree topology work. It looks like we're going to pump this.
Yeah, that's been moved to next quarter.
Okay. The out-of-tree CSI drivers, moving them into a separate repo, NFS, iSCSI, and fiber channel. Methuselah, John. Sorry, go ahead.
NFS and iSCSI is just, it's moved by just the other stuff that we need to add in, right?
Yep. So let's call it complete, and we'll carry on the rest of the work in the next quarter. Did fiber channel ever get merged?
No, not yet.
Okay.
We just might just release tool stuff and refactor it so that it can use the release tools.
Okay. Next item is moving online resizing to beta. So we'll make online resizing default starting 115 was the decision. Has that kept been merged, Hamad?
Not yet.
Okay.
There's a cap but open.
So we'll pick that up in 115. Audit CSI. Michelle, do you know if this happened?
Yes. So we identified a couple calls. We haven't fixed anything yet, though. So I think that will continue to next quarter.
And then finally, stateful set resize is outstanding right now as well. Okay. So now moving on to 115 planning. One of our big P1s is going to be migration again. This is going to be a multi-quarter effort to move the in-tree volume plugins to CSI. This is a cross-company effort between us, AWS, and Deep from Docker to try and build the tooling that is required to create the shims to automatically call out to the CSI drivers instead of using the in-tree code. So that work is going to continue this quarter. Deep or anybody else want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so basically we are on track. It's going to be pretty ambitious because there are quite a few work items, but we're looking forward to it. Some of the main things are going to be to handle attached limits, resizing, inline volume specifications in pods, as well as setting up the whole CI infra.
Cool. Thank you, Deep.
Another big item there is Windows support, but we'll get to more details down the line.
Okay. Is that being tracked in this line item as well?
So I added another item in the agenda so we can.
Okay. Perfect. And the next item we have here is CI and testing for migration. Next up is adding support for online and offline resizing to CSI. This was added as alpha, and we'd like to move it to beta. Hamant, does this sound right to you?
Yeah, sounds reasonable. I think we can do it.
Cool. Next item is block volume support. It's going to remain in beta. It was just moved to beta in Q1, but we need to add more tests to make sure this code path is stable and hopefully get some more implementations, driver implementations. Masaki or Ben, does that sound good to you? Michelle, do you know if we have a commitment from Misaki to work on this?
I will reach out to him and check.
Okay. I'll just leave a question mark there for now. Next item is CSI pod inline volume support. So this just barely missed 114, so we're going to move it to 115. Vlad, are you still the right person to work on this for 115?
Yes.
Awesome.
And I'm presuming it will remain alpha since.
Yes.
It won't be, okay.
Yep. Next item is entry per node volume attach limits. This is currently beta in the core, but it needs to be redesigned. So it will remain in beta. Amanth, are you the right person to own this?
Jan will work
Jan.
on this. I will do the
Okay.
review. I can review it.
Cool. Okay. Next item is CSI volume capacity usage metrics. Is this something that we want to commit to for this quarter? We didn't get too much traction on it last quarter.
Yeah, we have like a bunch of people willing to help us out on getting this implemented.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find someone. There's what's the name of this person? Let me see.
And would this be a design this quarter or an alpha implementation?
I don't think we need a cap for this. We haven't traditionally written down caps for matrix, but we could just implement it. Like it was just one more interface that implements the matrix interface. One more like concrete type that implements CSI matrix interfaces.
Mm-hmm.
So we should put it as an alpha. Yeah.
Okay. And we can find the person who's going to work on this later.
Yeah, I'll fill this up. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Next item is per PVC provisioning secrets. So this is in the CSI provisioner, the external provisioner, there is logic that allows you to do templating, basically for secrets. Instead of hard coding to a specific secret to be used for every single volume, you can template such that the PV namespace or name, or the PVC name or namespace, or an annotation from the PVC is used as part of the name for the secret. And what this allows you to do is have a different secret for each one of your volumes that's provisioned. And there are provision secrets, there's attached, detached secrets, there's mount, unmount secrets. The attach and mount, unmount secrets currently allow you to template based off the PVC name, which is pretty useful. But the provision one does not allow that. There was a number of reasons when Jordan introduced this feature that he decided not to allow this on the provisioning secret. But we've discussed with him since, and it seems like it would be very useful. So we're going to be opening that up to make it more flexible and allow that templating on the provision secret as well. So this would be, I don't think this is alpha, beta, GA. I think this is kind of a bug fix level thing. Would you agree, Michelle?
Sure.
Okay. And do we have someone committed to working on this?
I think Luis might have been interested in this,
Okay.
but I don't know if he's here.
Okay, so we'll leave it unassigned for now until we have someone committed to it. Next item is delete volume finalizer when a snapshot is being created. This is for CSI snapshots.
Yeah, so this we already have a PR, so it's just need to change the way how it is implemented. So I'll be working on that.
Okay. So this remains alpha.
Right, it's part of Snapshot.
Okay. A bigger, higher level questions for Snapshot is, do we want to move this implementation to beta this quarter, or do we want to wait another quarter?
Yeah, that would be great if we can move that to beta. Yeah.
Do you have
I guess the question is, we'll have to figure out like what is all the new things that we want to continue adding to Snapshot, and are those worth waiting?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So the big thing would be the execution hook, right? So
yeah,
Jingle had. So if you want to wait for the execution hook, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, we are currently have a few features we want to like work on. So we need to have a complete picture of what features like need to be included before we move to beta. So yeah, we will discuss soon, and they have a plan. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you for the update. So the feature here is for volume finalizers, and then the next item is snapshot execution hook. Both of those are alpha, assigned to Jing and Cheng, so it looks good there. Priority-wise, P2 seems reasonable to me. Next item is CSI out of tree, automating the sidecar release process and adding end-to-end tests. Patrick is still the right person to work on this, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay. Next item is refactoring the Qubit device plugin. And I've updated that with a link to the current PR. Next item is volume cloning. Is John on the line by any chance? And is he the right person to own this? I know he had a cap out.
I see John added another item down, which I think is the same. There's a
Yeah, John's still the right person to own this, I believe.
Okay.
Was it in 23, I believe. 23 enable PVC as data source. I think that's the same as the clone.
Yep. Okay, let me move that up.
So I know they're still actively working on all of those clone features.
Got it. Okay. So let me do this. I'll combine these two, CSI. Okay.
Also, 31, I believe, is the same as the transfer, I think there are two items that are the same.
Delete that one. And you're saying 31 is the same as which number?
I don't think 31 is the same.
No, I thought there was one for transfer, the namespace. The volume snapshot namespace transfer is the same as that one. That's 31.
Okay, so 31 is pluggable end to end.
Oh, not. Oh, sorry, it's 30 now.
30. Oh.
No, I don't think 30 is about transferring namespaces.
Let's see. Oh no, that's not the right one. Okay, sorry.
Okay. What I also want to do is move up this populate data source and kind of group all the things that John's working on together. So we have volume cloning. That one makes sense. Second item is volume snapshot namespace transferring. So the idea here is that, hey, I create a volume from a snapshot, or I clone a volume, but I want it in a different namespace. How do I move volumes across namespaces? And namespaces traditionally have been a security boundary, so we don't want to just say, hey, I can provision new volume and use a snapshot from a different namespace. But we don't have a mechanism to easily move snapshots and volumes across namespaces. So the idea here is to come up with an implementation that will allow you to safely move things across namespaces. So ideally, this would be a two-way handshake. Details of how exactly it'll work are being worked out. The third item here is populator data source. So we do have a data source field on the PVC object when you provision. Currently, it supports snapshot as a source. And with number 14, volume cloning, it's going to support PVC as a data source. But in the future, we want to kind of open this data source up to any arbitrary CRD. So you could imagine, for example, a GitHub as a populator, right? If I have a volume and I want to pre-populate it always with a GitHub repo or a Docker image, you could write a populator, a standalone external populator that can pre-populate volumes. This design is fairly complicated because you have to have your populator pod be able to basically attach and mount this volume before it's ready, but make sure that no other regular pods are able to attach and mount this volume. And we want to do this in a backwards compatible way. So the orchestration around this gets pretty tricky. So for that reason, this is going to be designed for this quarter. We just want to make sure that we get this right. But once we do, I think it'll be a pretty powerful interface. Next item is CSI out of tree. So we had the NFS, iSCSI, and fiber channel drivers. Let me go down here and copy the note from here about the remaining work. And Mathusin, are you still the right person to work on this? And if so, which ones are you committing to?
I've just been working on the fiber channel stuff, been looking at and following the NFS. I haven't, but I think Partik is the one that's actually contributed code to it.
Okay.
I haven't touched the iSCSI. Got it.
So for the NFS one, let's have you as the reviewer and Pratik as the main person. And you're the main person for the fiber channel one. Is Matt Wong still the right person to help review that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then for iSCSI, we'll leave that a question mark and see if... Could you help verify if Pratik is still the right person to work on the iSCSI one as well?
Sure.
Cool. Thank you. Don't think we needed a issue there. Okay. Next item is non-recursive volume ownership. So somebody mentioned non-recursive ownership plus Windows support. Do we want to capture that as a single item or a separate item?
I think it should be separate item because currently we do it only for Linux, and if we have to implement for Windows, we have to rethink the whole thing a little bit. But the implementation itself will be separate from the current one, or we'll have to implement basically. At least I would like to be do separate. I don't know what other people think.
Makes sense. I think it'll be easier to track the work if we try to decouple all these pieces. So non-recursive volume ownership. Right now, every time a volume is mounted, if there is file permission setting specified, the code will recursively iterate through the entire volume and apply basically chown every single file and directory. And that can take a very long time, especially for very large volumes. And so the ask here is to come up with a design to simplify that, but do so in a backwards compatible way. Is Matt still the right person to work on this?
I think you can put me as because we are just targeting design this quarter, so in 1.115. So you can put me on the main person. I'll try set up calls and see.
And who would be the right person to help review this?
Michelle, I think.
Okay, Michelle, is that okay with you, or?
Sure.
Okay. Next item is file permission handling for Windows. I think it's also going to be designed for this quarter. Hemant, are you still the right person to work on that, or do you want someone else to help with that?
I'd like to someone help with that because I don't know much about Windows.
We don't have a lot of Windows access.
Yep, that's fair. Is anybody on this call interested in helping with this issue? Is anybody interested in Windows and figuring out how file permissions are going to work there?
So I can help. This is Deep.
Oh, cool. Hey, Deep. I also don't want to overcommit you because I know you're going to be focused on
Migration.
On the migration. So this would definitely be a P2 in its design. So feel free to prioritize accordingly, or if you know somebody else who might be able to help with this, you could be a reviewer for it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll try to find someone from Docker who can help.
Okay, so let me leave that unassigned for now. Next item is revisiting UID GID handling. Brad, are you still the right owner for this one?
Yeah, we can. Yep.
Okay, cool. Next is moving the mount library to external. Let me copy over the comment from this one so we have the latest status. And I didn't hear Travis on the call. Vlad, do you know if Travis would still be able to commit to this?
Sorry. Yeah, it's on vacation right now. As far as I know, it should be.
Okay. We'll leave a question bar next to his name and then verify once he gets back. Thank you,
Okay.
Vlad. Next item is volume expansion for stateful set. I think we should get this design moving along. How close was the design to merge last time, Hemant?
So this was blocked on how are we going to resize the volume type that only support offline. It didn't handle it at all, and it just we have to get that that sorted out. I can reach out to Sidak and see what if he's still interested in working on it.
Okay.
If he's not, we might have to kind of like push it to next quarter or something. But I'll reach out to him first.
Okay, sounds good. And I was talking to the SIG Apps lead, and he was interested in helping drive this. He said he needed help from our side to kind of get the KEP approved.
Okay.
So I can ask him for somebody else who would be willing to pick up the actual design and code.
Cool.
Do we, should this still be a 3? If it
No.
seems like SIG apps also wants.
Yeah. I would call this a 2 at least. Does that seem reasonable, Michelle?
Yeah.
Okay. Next up is volume health. We had a fancy name for it over here. No, we didn't. It was called volume health. Okay, so volume health design. Nick Wren, still the right person for this?
I think he's still interested.
We should probably, should this be related to the monitoring stuff that we have above? Or is it separate?
Related, but they're not handling exactly the same.
What is this monitoring thing?
I think there was a proposal to add metrics to CSI.
Oh, that's different.
Is there another one?
Okay, so this is more around what is the health of the actual volume itself. Okay.
Right. Yeah, maybe related. We'll figure out if it's related.
Sure.
We can combine effort.
I think, well, having metrics for CSI drivers, I think, is also useful, but I think it's probably not quite so related to this.
Makes sense.
So yeah, so this one we also need to need some CSI design. So, but it's so we need to check if the volume is still there, if it's still attached. So I don't know if the metrics thing. Not sure what that one is. The checking maybe a little different, but related, I think.
I think metrics are more for like the driver stuff, like how long is it taking for the driver to do this operation and that kind of thing, and the health of the driver.
Okay.
Whereas the volume health is like the health of the actual storage.
Yeah. That makes sense.
The proposal before is because currently from PVC, right, the status, we see nothing about volume. You don't know even they still exist or not, whether it's still attached. So we want to add some status information so user can easily see.
Yeah, that seems like a good idea. Who is going to commit to working on this quarter? Is Nick Wren still the right person?
We can reach out and
he said last time I asked him, he said he's interested.
Okay, so we'll leave a question mark next to his name until you're able to verify. Next item is Snapshot Quota.
Yeah, so Jean told me that now we have a quota for CRD, so we can implement that one for a snapshot.
Okay. And would this be a design or an alpha implementation?
I guess we should be able to implement it. We can take a look, and if if it's available for CRD, then we should just.
For snapshot should be very similar to quota, let's say for other like PVC volume. The design should be very similar.
Okay. So let's call it alpha for this quarter then.
Okay.
And I'm going to move up this snapshot item next to the other snapshot items we have, so it's kind of logically grouped. All right, next item is group snapshot.
Right. So we actually started some design discussions earlier, but then we decided to focus on execution hook first. So now, if we can get the execution hook done, that can also be applied to group snapshot or application snapshot. So we should start to go back to this design discussions again.
Okay. I think between the execution hook and the group snapshots, execution hook is a higher priority.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going
that
to.
One, yeah. We hope to start implement that one.
Okay.
Yeah. But this one will just be.
And in terms of kind of consistency groups in general, I was talking to Jing about this yesterday. I think my opinion on this has changed a little bit more recently. I think I'm not convinced that this needs to be exposed directly in the Kubernetes API, especially if SIG apps picks up execution hooks and helps with doing application level QS and unQS. But we can have that discussion in the snapshot.
Yeah, I think we still need to have the discussion either way. If they want to pick up, it's fine, but we need to discuss.
Yep, fair enough. Next item is scalability testing. This is going to continue. Michelle, do you have someone in mind to help implement this?
No, I do not. So if anyone is interested and wants access to a 5,000 node cluster, please let me know.
Cool. So if you're interested in helping write some scalability tests and play with some lots and lots of machines, please reach out. Next item is post-GA in-tree topology. Is this the read-only work, or what was this?
This was about trying to change our default storage classes to use delayed binding by default, and also figuring out how to backfill older PDs with the node affinity.
Got it. Switch the default storage classes to use late binding. And sorry, what was the second one?
And how to backfill older PDs with the node affinity.
Okay, so good backwards compatibility stuff to consider there. And this would be a straight GA thing, I guess, since it's just modifying fields. Okay, and then we have an empty line here. We'll go ahead and delete that. Pass ownership created by metadata from stateful sets to PVCs. So was this around labeling?
So this is about, this is an idea I had to be able to support spreading volume creation across failure domains for storage systems that have topology unrelated to the outside of the Kubernetes topology.
And this is something that Michelle and I talked about. We have a customer that likes stateful sets, and they want the use cases, they have these volumes that they want. If they're in a stateful set, they need to be placed on different nodes in the actual storage cluster, which is separate from the accessibility. So
got it. So basically, it's making stateful sets more intelligent and spreading instead of kind of dumb round robining. Seems reasonable. Haley, are you committing to working on this?
I can help out. I haven't done this before, so I'm a little hesitant to take the lead on it.
That's okay. I think Michelle is a very, very good mentor. So we can get started, and anything that you kind of run into issues with, she can certainly help you. And I can also help you and Brad as well.
Sure, I'll do it.
Awesome. Let's see if I am going to spell your name correctly. Okay. Next item is Pluggable end-to-end test framework documentation. So this would just be docs. And Patrick is still the right person to work on this, Michelle?
I think either Patrick or Methusen or Matt.
Yeah, I think either three would work.
I think Methuselah and Matt already have like some examples. So it's probably just a matter of moving, committing those examples to like a Kubernetes CSI repository.
Okay. Methuselah, is this something you're willing to commit to for the quarter?
Sure.
Okay. So we'll just switch to one owner instead of multiple, so it's easier to get status updates. All right, next item is CSI entry read-only handling. This was something that we punted on last quarter. Do we have an owner for this, Michelle?
No.
Okay, we'll leave it uncommitted for now. And P2 or P3?
I think last time I looked at this, I said the current use case doesn't really need this, but it will become important once we have cloning, I think, or populators.
Got it. So let's leave it P2, considering we've got cloning coming down the pipe. All right, next item is auditing CSI. So the item here, I guess, would be to implement the fixes.
That's correct.
And priority-wise, is that a 2 or a 3?
I think it's still a 2. I think most of the places where this issue comes... Oh, actually, maybe a 1. I think there's currently one CSI test that's failing because of that, and I think we basically leave orphaned pod mounts on when the pod gets deleted. So that might be a more important issue, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So I think it'll be important for us to make sure, do you know if this person is going to be able to commit for this quarter?
I will check with him.
Okay.
He's been very responsive, so
okay. Wonderful. And the last item I had was for the CSI spec. Now that the spec is 1.0, it's very important for us to have some mechanism by which we can have kind of alpha, beta, GA designations. This is a conversation I've already started with the CSI community, and there's a couple of proposals out there. What we did before 1.0 is we would introduce a feature and then we would kind of refine it and implement it and revise it and make breaking changes. But with 1.0, the guarantee is that we're not going to make breaking changes moving forward to the spec. But we also want to be able to add new functionality, and the reality is that anytime you add something to an interface, you're probably not going to get it right the first time. It's going to take a few iterations to do so, and you may want to make changes to that implementation. In 1.1, resizing went in as essentially GA. It's a little bit unfortunate, but we kind of had to do it. It was either delay resizing some more and figure out how to do this alpha beta GA or get it in, and we're kind of taking a gamble and saying, I think this is the way we want resizing to look. And even snapshots to a certain extent was added shortly before 1.0. But moving forward for any subsequent features, before they go into the CSI spec, I want to make sure that we have some way to have them go in as alpha. So that's something that I'll commit to working with the CSI community. Is there anybody else interested in this topic on this call? You can be my reviewer. Okay, Michelle, you become my de facto.
All right.
Okay, so I think we've got quite a lot of items, 2 more items than we committed to last quarter. So it's unlikely that we'll get everything done, but please focus on the things that are high priority first. So if you have multiple items assigned to you, Let that be your guiding light. The biggest things that we want to unblock right now are the migration. The quicker we can move everything over to CSI, the more we can just focus on CSI instead of so many different things. So that migration is our biggest priority. Then continuing to bring feature parity between what we have in tree and what we have out of tree. That is all I have in terms of planning. Thank you for putting up with that. Let's move on to the next agenda item. So call out, there is a new API review process. Please take a look if you're making API changes at this link. It documents how the process works. That should be it. And if you have any concerns about it, talk to SIG Architecture. They're kind of the ones leading this effort.
Saad, going back to the planning sheet.
Yes.
Do we want to add Windows to this list?
Right.
Yeah, that was kind of the next agenda item too. So I wanted to have a quick discussion and then start adding or expanding on the CSI.
Okay. Do you wanna introduce the topic, Deep?
Sure. Do you want to open up that doc?
Sure.
So essentially, with 1.14, Windows support kind of became stable. So basically, we'll start seeing Windows Node appearing in mixed clusters with Linux nodes. So basically, I started off with this quick document kind of laying out an overview of what are the options there for Linux workloads today. And then in the next section, I go over the present state of things with Windows, which is mainly support in a handful of entry plugins. For example, GCPD, Azure Disk, Azure File. And then there are also these Flex Volume plugins that are not maintained in any official Kubernetes repo. It's kind of like a external Microsoft repo where they've been maintaining these Flex Volume drivers. So in terms of the future, like, if you want to really support persistent workloads, which I think we do for Windows workloads, then we need to probably handle a few different scenarios. So I break them out into potentially looking into, and this would probably be controversial, but potentially looking into a SMB plugin for entry. I understand that entry, we do not want to add stuff to entry, but just like we have NFS and iSCSI today, the first proposal is, can we bring in a SMB one and enhance the iSCSI plugin to be able to support Windows through the PowerShell commandlets instead of the iSCSI ADM toolset that today supports Linux workloads. So that's sort of the first proposal. The second one is, what are some of the potential ways we can support CSI? So obviously the easiest one is, say, so just for some background, one of the big constraining factors in Windows is the lack of privileged support for privileged containers. So the containers cannot really, in Windows, using default bind mount mechanisms, write to the host namespace. They can only read from there. But one of the workarounds available for this is that we can potentially consider a privileged proxy process. So this will be an unmanaged binary, but sort of like a single utility binary that multiple CSI node plugins can use on a Windows node in order to get their privileged operations done. So I've discussed this a little bit with Yuju and Jing, and they had some feedback. One of the biggest concerns here is, like, what do we do around security? Because you have this like sort of privileged name pipe. There are some thoughts around like potentially using a pod security policy to tighten this up. And on the side of advantages for this process, the main advantage is that the node plugins can be packaged as containers, and they can be distributed in a way very similar to how Linux CSI plugins are done today. They can also continue to use the node registrar as a sidecar with this mechanism. and the overall management of the node plugins becomes very easy through standard Kubernetes mechanisms, such as like a daemon set. So there are several advantages, but security is one of the biggest concerns that I need to figure out. One of the things I wonder from the community is like, obviously I'll detail this out in a CAP for much more detailed conversation and comments. But does this even sound like a plausible way forward before we spend too much time prototyping this with the GCPD? That's one of the kind of high level things I was looking for. And just for completeness, I also call out that, just like today, the external sidecars are not necessary for a CSI plugin to be used. Similarly, this is not something that we will enforce on people. And obviously, we cannot cover any arbitrary advanced privileged operation that someone might need in a Windows node. So in those cases, non-containerized CSI node plugins will be the way to go. So it's not being blocked, but this is potentially going to be, like through this storage proxy mechanism, going to be a much easier way to deploy.
And so the benefit of this is that you could still containerize your CSI Windows plugin, and the node component just needs to be able to be run on Windows, and it will drop a Unix domain socket on the host path at the right place. I guess Windows now supports Unix domain sockets, right?
Yep.
Okay.
It can be a name pipe or a domain socket, right?
Okay. And if it's a name pipe, would we need to modify the kubelet device plugin registration mechanism to detect that and be able to handle that correctly?
So I'm still testing out the domain socket mechanism. So if that does not work out, then yeah, we'll have to consider that.
Okay. And then, so that's the initial registration. Beyond the initial registration, you're saying that instead of using the privileged container to do the mounts or the equivalent of the mounts inside the container, you'll have the container call out to this proxy sitting on the underlying host. And somehow we're going to secure that. And this proxy can then issue the right commands to make the volume available.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I was thinking, just like we have kube proxy, we have something like storage proxy potentially.
And do you have a prototype of this at the moment, or you're working on a prototype?
Yeah, I'm working on that with GCPD as the first one.
Okay.
So if this seems like something that may be potentially useful, I can detail this out in a CAP for the comments.
Yeah, I think this sounds very promising. I know for our initial look at this, we were just considering putting CSI drivers on Windows not containerized, which is extremely painful. So this looks pretty cool to me. But definitely the security implications here need to be thought through. Right. So CAP would be a good next step. I am willing to add this to and are you interested in driving this design, or would you have somebody else available to help?
I think I can drive this, but I'll definitely need reviews from maybe Cheng and Windows.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I just wanted to interject there on the proposal. By the way, Deep, thanks for putting that together. This is Subodh. I work for Microsoft in the container team. And we looked at the proposal and just wanted to give a heads up that we are starting out a spec for privileged containers.
Nice.
So there may be things that, obviously that can help there, right? But it's not going to be a immediate term project. I would say at least 4 to 6 months out, right? So let's spin up a work stream if you're okay with that. And let's see how we can sort of intercept that or do something there as well as this, if that makes sense, to accelerate this effort, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, privilege support for Windows would definitely be the ultimate nirvana point. But do you think like that'll land in a long-term support Windows version anytime soon, maybe? Or
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're able to pull together a spec for this and put it out in the next semi-annual channel release, as we call it for Windows,
Okay.
It will make its way into long-term, and there might even be a possibility to backport it into RS5.
Oh, excellent. I see.
So, yeah. So let's chat offline if that makes sense, or we can also spin up a work stream in the open and see what the requirements are and how we can best address those. But just wanted to give a heads up in this community that it is something we are thinking about.
That would be excellent.
Cool. That's super exciting. And Subodh, do you have someone from your team who's willing to kind of help with this design?
Yeah, absolutely. I've shared this with folks internally, so I'll ask somebody to either connect with Deep directly or just be part of this forum maybe next time around, right?
Awesome.
To give an update on where we are. Yeah.
All right. That sounds good.
Right. So Saad, any thoughts on like the potential for a entry SMB plugin? Is that absolute no-no, or given the
We've taken a very, very hard line on entry plugins, and we're pushing as many entry plugins out to CSI as possible. I understand the kind of special case here. Windows doesn't have a viable CSI story yet. So I could buy the argument of making an exception here. But let's, if we're going to do it, let's run it by SIG architecture and put together a case. Does anybody on this call have a strong objection to this?
Can we see the list of technical reasons that would push us towards this and not towards Flex or something else?
Yeah, so I call out the advantages and disadvantages in this doc. And the other thing I also call out is potentially coming up with a CSI driver SMB, just like we have the CSI driver NFS and ISCSI.
Right. And depending on how quickly this proxy materializes into a real solution, the entry solution might not be necessary. But again, I'm not saying hard no. I'm just saying the bar is pretty high if we're going to do it.
I don't see any blocker stuff on the advantages. I mean, it's a UX. It's really a user experience advantage, right? Just that everything's there and easy to install.
Yeah, and honestly, like it's, you know, what are the options? There's entry, there's CSI, and there's Flex. Flex has the worst user experience in terms of you actually have to have access to the underlying host in order to deploy the plugin. CSI has a pretty decent user experience because the user can deploy the plugin simply through kubectl and the Kubernetes API. And then the entry, of course, requires no extra work. So ideally, if we had a viable CSI solution, I think there would be no need for this. But if we do not have a viable CSI solution for the foreseeable future, I think I can be convinced that Flex is too cumbersome to be a go-to option. But I also realize that Windows support is only alpha right now. And by the time it goes to GA is going to be probably more than a few quarters. And if by then CSI becomes more viable, then this becomes less of an option. So I'm kind of on the fence.
Makes sense.
And to be clear, the CSI is not an option because of the containerized issue.
Yeah. No privilege support.
No privilege support, okay.
I would say let's get a better understanding of this storage proxy, and let's get a prototype of that. And if it looks like that is not a viable way forward and privileged containers are not looking like they're coming down the line anytime soon, then we can consider this the subsequent quarter.
Okay, sounds good.
And also, is the plan to keep the NFS and the ISCSI entry plugins? I thought we have CSI plugins for those, right?
Yeah, so the plan for the migration is the cloud provider plugins are going to be moved first because we want to get cloud provider code out of the core as quickly as possible. And then the long tail of these other volume plugins that we have. I think the third-party owned ones will be the first ones we want to move. And then I think the last ones will be like ISCSI, NFS, and Fiber Channel. But that is the ultimate goal.
Okay.
Great. So I'll get a cap started and the prototype started on the Proxy, and we'll go from there. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you so much for putting this together. This is very extensive, and you definitely did your homework here. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
And I think we've got the items that we need there. And did you have anything else in this that you wanted to talk about?
Just for completeness, I called out a non-containerized option, but yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's the final back.
Thanks, Deep. And we have one more item, annotate PVC using provisioning secret templating from Sri. Sri, would you mind if we move this to the next meeting since we're 10 minutes over time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you everyone, and have a good rest of your day. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks.